Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 738. 738, Sunday, March 31st, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. My oh my. The fallout continues. Let's go ahead and get into the excuse me. Let's go ahead and get into the news and see what we can find. Shall we? Okay, it looks like Trump is going to end payments to Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, saying, quote, they haven't done a thing for us, end quote. I love the way he thinks. And of course, he's prepared to close the border with Mexico as well, and said that may happen this week. And of course, he wants, Mexico to do more. And that's exactly right. They should be dealing with this situation. They have the ability to stop a lot of these people coming up from South America. Most of these people that are coming in, like this caravan that's on its way here now, 20,000 people or more, 95% of these people are not Mexican. They're coming from other places in South America, across the southern Mexico border. And they could be doing a lot better than they are. And it's great to see we actually have a president who will call this out. We've known it for decades, but because neither party wanted to address it, and they still don't, but Trump's forcing them. Trump's forcing the Republicans anyway, because these Republican members of Congress know it's popular with the, not just with Republicans, but Democrats across the country, many Democrats, not the crazy ones on the far left. I'm talking about many rational Democrats. Everyone knows, as we've known for decades, that we have literally over 1 million people pour across our border every year. We don't know who they are, and they create a lot of problems. Now, there are a lot of people who come across the border and help us out because they take jobs and things and such. We do need the foreign labor. There's no question about that. Everyone agrees on that. But it's got to be the legal path to come in this country and work. You don't have to even go through citizenship. There's plenty of people that that come to this country and get a work visa, and that's fine. They come here, they work for a few months or whatever, they go back home. I have no problem with that. But we have to know who's coming into the country and why, and what they're doing here, and why they're here, while they're here, where they are, and things and such. You got to keep track of that. You just can't have this situation continue any longer. And we can see the decades and decades and decades that this has been going on. We can see the massive crisis that has been created and how much harm it's done to the country. And it's time to put a stop to it. And we finally have a president who's doing that. Thank God. I mean, so many people, this was a huge issue for many years, and people just finally gave up on it. They just finally said, okay, look, Republicans and Democrats, neither of them want this issue resolved. It's not going to happen. Because they agreed on it. They agreed that they didn't want to solve the issue. Because they both benefit in their minds. Finally, we have a president who's saying no to the establishment. We're going to fix this problem. And I totally agree. And as far as the cutting these payments to these three countries, I think we should end all foreign aid. I don't know why we send out foreign aid. Why do we need to send out foreign aid? What we should do is say, you know, if your country is so poor that you have to take a handout from another country, you're probably doing something wrong. Now, I understand you have an earthquake or a natural disaster, or you have a major dry season or a major wet season and crops die off and people are starving or something. Yes, I mean, send them food, send them supplies, send them what they need. But this is automatic sending billions of dollars to foreign countries for no apparent reason I can see, because as we can see here, they do nothing, as Trump said, to help us. It's the right call at the right time by the right man. And I think he's going to be rewarded for this, even by a lot of Democrats who will never admit it to their Democrat friends. Well done, Mr. President, once again. Winning! Well, my friends, as I've been telling you for the past couple days, this thing on Joe Biden, releasing this story about Joe Biden is basically a maneuver by the rotten Reverend Clinton, her demented disciples acting on her behalf to cut the legs out from Uncle Joe, just as I told you she would a month ago. When everyone's talking, well, Biden, is he going to jump in? And I'm telling you, a month ago, if Biden jumps in, the rotten Reverend will cut his legs right out from underneath him. And he knows it. He knows this. That's why he's never thrown his hat in a ring. So, think about it. This story that's now dogging him was actually, this event, this thing happened back in 2014. I believe the story was written a year later. So this has been out there for 3 years. But why does it just now come into vogue? And if you notice these stories coming out of left-wing media outlets reporting on this story, which they generally wouldn't do against a Democrat, and also not just showing you this story, but saying, yes, and there's some other instances where he's done similar things, and they show you pictures of a half a dozen or so other people who Biden has sniffed their hair or put his arm underneath their right here or whatever. I mean, getting dangerously close. I mean, generally when you put your arm around a woman, you don't bring your hand right to here. That's closer than you need to be, right? So, and generally you don't do that anyway, especially in this day and age. So, it's pretty obvious to me that this is a orchestrated attack, and it's not just from journalists on the right or so-called journalists or reporters. These stories on Biden are coming out of the left wing. What does that tell you? They're acting on orders from somebody, because the left-wing media, they are essentially a public relations organization for the Democratic Party. They take their marching orders from the Democratic Party. That's why they use the exact same words in their talking points. It doesn't matter which left-wing media outlet you look at. As soon as they get their talking points, they are all in unison, using the exact same words, making the same point, like they're reading off a script, because they are. So who put out the script to go after Biden? I'm telling you, the rotten reverend. The rotten reverend. So, the question is, does this Me Too moment for Uncle Joe, Creepy Joe, Biden, does this take him out of the game? I'm thinking it probably does. Because his campaign has responded. His campaign has responded, even though he actually hasn't announced. He's actually got a campaign team already. And they came out and responded to the allegations by former Congresswoman Flores, but they do not deny her charge. And he has not come out and announced yet. So he's obviously known that there's stuff lurking out there. Someone is in the ear of people around Biden saying, hey, be careful, there's stuff out there, just so you know it's coming. And they're being told that. I'm telling you, someone's working Biden. Someone's working him to let him know that if he tries to get in this thing, that he is going to be facing some issues. And they're saying, do you really want to do it? And he knows where it's coming from. The rotten reverend. I'd say it's at least 50-50, if not better than 50-50, that she is going to run. I'm not saying she's going to win the primary. She may lose the primary. But I think she believes that she is still the most powerful Democrat in the Democratic Party. I think she looks at the rest of the field with Kamala Harris and Booker and Sanders and all these people. And I think she thinks that she can beat them all. I know she thinks she can raise more money than they can. I know she thinks she's got the backing of the establishment. And why not give Hillary? He's sitting at 50% in approval. He's got a good economy. He's probably going to be reelected. Why do you want to throw one of your good horses out there to get beat up? You don't. You do what the Republicans did in 96 when they threw Bob Dole out there for the victory lap. Throw old Hillary out there for the victory lap. Bring back the Scooby Van. Bring back the Chairman Mao pantsuits with the colostomy bags that leak, by the way. Bring it all back. Bring it all back. One more round. Let the rotten reverend take her victory lap. Maybe it'll help. She thinks it'll help keep her out of jail. I don't know. I think she will be indicted as well. We'll keep following this, but my gut tells me 50-50, maybe a little better than 50-50, that she's going to run again. And I'm way better than 50-50 that these attacks on Biden are coming from the surrogates, the sycophants, the demented disciples of the rotten Reverend Clinton. Rand Paul. Day 3 of Rand Paul. 3 days in a row. He's on fire. Rand Paul is demanding an investigation of the Obama administration over the Russia scandal, fiasco. And he's saying, could have been worse than Watergate. It could be worse than Watergate. Yeah, well, if you go back to TowerGate video number 1, that's why I tell you I started doing these videos. Because after watching 2 days of Trump not back down, I watched him double down on saying Obama tapped his wires. I realized at that point he definitely knows something. And this is not going away. And if it turns out to be true, what he's saying, it's bigger than Watergate. Rudy Giuliani says that if they force the release of the Mueller report, he's good with that because he's already got an 87-page scathing report that he says will be very damaging and embarrassing to the Mueller team and all his friends, by the way. Not only that, but Rudy also says that that there will be an investigation on the FISA warrants and that people will be indicted for perjury. There will be prosecutions of people for perjury. Damn straight. Absolutely. 100%. I'm telling you. A lot of people don't think it's going to happen, but I'm telling you, it is going to happen. If many of the other things might get washed away and swept under the rug, but you cannot sweep the FISA thing under the rug. No way. Everybody knows it. It's out there. We know what they did. They used the dossier. It was bullshit. They knew it was bullshit. They left out a lot of exculpatory evidence. They lied to the FISA court. Everyone who signed off is almost certainly top-tier people who signed off on it almost certainly are going to be indicted. And they've lied about what they did on top of the crime they committed. They lied about the crime. It's not just the perjury. Well, it's perjury to the FISA court and then perjury to the people, investigators or other people who asked them about that perjury. They perjured themselves after perjuring themselves. That's exactly what they've done. And yes, absolutely. When this all shakes itself out, Comey, Brennan, Yates, Rodenstein, they all better lawyer up because they signed off on a FISA warrant that was bullshit, and they knew it. Absolutely. Well, the wild-eyed commie, Ocasio-Cortez, is now blaming a staffer for the disastrous rollout of her Green New Deal. Particularly that part about the cow farting and things and such. And she says, yeah, I had a staffer who had a bad day. Well, the fact of the matter is, folks, the wild-eyed commie Cortez is an actor. She was recruited by the Jake Ugar, what's his name, who has Secular Talk, forget his name, in this little organization they put together to try to get a bunch of Justice Democrats to defeat incumbent Democrats. And she was one of the few that they managed to win with. And she essentially passed an audition. She gets her talking points directly from them. She's coached 100%. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing. And they also put together her staff for her. And they are as clueless and nutty as she is. But she's an actress. Actor, whatever you want to call it. That's all she is. She's being exposed. I'd be surprised if she's reelected. I really would be. She is a real jewel. She's down to 23% in approval ratings. Okay. More revelations from the Nellie Orr release. Nellie says that she never used a ham radio to contact or conduct her investigation while working for Confusion GPS. She says that she got a ham radio license as part of an effort to help with local community emergencies. Maybe. Possible. Still a little suspicious, but until we find evidence otherwise, I'll accept that, but I'm still suspicious of it. When Nellie was asked about her work for the CIA, her lawyer intervened and said that Nellie would not get into specifics, but would only admit to working for the CIA as a subcontractor. Would not get into the specifics, but would only talk about her work in a general sense as a subcontractor. We'll learn more about that, I'm sure. Well, look who we have running her mouth, and I'm really surprised. I think this is one person, if anybody, should be keeping her mouth shut, is silly Sally Yates. She, too, is demanding the entire Mueller report. Well, yeah, silly Sally, I'd love to see the Mueller report, right along with everyone else, including the president and every Republican who voted for it. but we're also going to want to see all the evidence and all the investigative materials that was used to put together the report, Sally. We also are going to want to see a lot of other things, Sally, that occurred during the 2016 election that you were a part of, such as the 28 pages of the FISA court document, which I have more on here in just a moment. The Gang of Eight conversations, more released emails, hopefully more emails and text from you, Sally, with the Department of Justice and the FBI, with Comey, McCabe, and others. Let's find out what you were talking about back in 2016, 2017, prior to your being fired. There's a lot to learn, Sally, and we all want to know everything, don't we? I mean, you do like transparency, don't you, Sally? Good. Well, only 37% of people believe that the Mueller investigation was justified. 37%. Boy, that's a big drop. It's like a 25, 30-point drop in a very short period of time. And where did this media poll come from? CBS. Wow. CBS. I bet they're not happy over at CBS. And get this. 54% in the same poll, 54% say the investigation, the Mueller probe, was politically motivated. You know what kind of numbers these are? These are the type of numbers that deliver landslides. That's what these type of numbers are. Because these are cutting into Democrats right here. Great article by Lee Smith. It's pretty long. A lot of his articles are. But it's a very good observation and overview of what we can expect the impact to be from the massive fail by the media in the Russiagate story. And so Lee Smith's article, I'm not going to go through it all. It's very long. You can read it if you want to. But Lee Smith's article basically says that Russiagate is an extinction-level event. An extinction-level event for the media. He's absolutely right. Because what's different? This is not just about the media getting these stories wrong. It is about them reporting what they knew was false. Having so-called experts like Clapper and Brennan and others, former administration officials, coming on and saying these people are going to be indicted, these people are going to go to jail. Trump Jr., Trump's going to be impeached, Trump Jr. is going to jail, Ivanka's going to Sing Sing. You know, all these things. They did this for 2 solid years, knowing it was all bullshit. They knew it. Their credibility is gone. It's one thing to misreport a story, get a story wrong. It's another thing to purposely mislead your viewers just to keep them coming back for more. And that's exactly what they did, like catnip they were throwing out there. They put out the bullshit knowing it was bullshit, but knowing it would keep viewers coming back. And now the viewers are figuring out that it wasn't just that Mad Cow and Morning Joe and all these people got this stuff wrong. Oh, no. They knew it was bullshit. So did all them experts that they brought on, former Obama administration officials. They all knew it as well. They're trying to play it off. It's just no one's buying it. And once this thing is fully unearthed, and it's going to be pretty much fully unearthed, then, and we're also going to find out the role that many of these media organizations played in perpetuating the hoax. There may be even some civil or criminal liability here. I'm telling you, Lee Smith is right. We will not see the full impact of this for several more months, maybe a year or two, when the other part of the story is unraveled. But once the full story, the other side that's now about to be looked at, is unraveled, that will do it. We could literally see complete failing media organizations like CNN. We could see the top people and all their top talent gone overnight practically. This is going to be, just as Lee Smith is saying, an extinction level event for the lamestream corporate media as a result of what they did to all those millions of people who counted on them to do news. And they found out what they got was 2 years of complete lies. I mean, yeah. Let's wait about a year from now and see what CNN and MSNBC and all those people, let's see what their ratings look like. Let's see who's running those corporations at that point. Let's see who the media talent are. And a lot of people are going to be gone a year, 2 years from now. Big change is coming. Whether or not they can ever get their reputation's back? I just don't know. Maybe not in my lifetime. Unbelievable. So I'm watching a very good interview with Papalopoulos, and it's with the Wall Street Journal reporter, and she did a pretty fair interview with him. She unfortunately wasn't fully read in on the facts, and obviously didn't read his book before she interviewed him, but because she was throwing in a few the talking points we've heard, which have been debunked, and he, of course, would quickly debunk them. But and it would interrupt him in a way because you have to back up and correct her on something, then move forward. But she essentially allowed him to give his side of the story, and it was about almost an hour-long interview. So probably the biggest couple things I got out of it, and the biggest thing that I think I got out of it was at the point where he's talking about Papalopoulos is talking with this interviewer, and they stumble into that territory of the 28 redacted pages because Papalopoulos wants all this stuff released because he says it will bear out the truth of what he says in his book. He says, what you see in my book, because I know what's in the 28 pages. He said, what you see in my book, he said, you're going to see when the 28 pages of the FISA court document comes out, as well as the Gang of Eight stuff, other things that are going to be declassified by the president. He said, when you see that stuff come out, it's my book actually goes into some of that, even before that stuff's been released. He said, there are some things I'm kind of gag ordered on, but he says, basically, you're going to find out some things. And then he began to shift that in that same conversation to talking about Alexander Down the Hatch Downer, and talking about exactly how he was put into the meeting with Downer, how he was put into the meeting with Misfit, and how he was put into the meeting with Halper. Exactly how all three of those things happened. So he's talking about the 28 pages, though, and he's really focusing on Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. And just the way that he was talking, I really get the strong impression that those 28 pages are going to detail the whole situation between Alexander Down the Hatch Downer and Papalopoulos. And it's going to shine a very, very bad light on Downer and Australia. So now, if you remember when Trump was going to declassify, he said there was actually a foreign government that called and basically begged him not to declassify. Now, we all assumed it was the UK. And I'm sure that they may have been certainly one of the people who expressed problems or concerns if he released that stuff. But if you listen to Papalopoulos, he is suggesting, if you really pay attention to what he said, because I backed it up and watched it 2 or 3 times, I'm thinking, what is he saying here? You know, and the best, I think my strongest impression is that he's suggesting that the 28 pages actually disclose a lot about the Alexander Downer situation. And it is likely that the government who called Trump and said, hey, you know, we don't think you should declassify those 28 pages, it could be very harmful to our relationship or whatever, Papalopoulos is suggesting that was Australia. And the reason Australia was calling Trump and saying don't declassify those 28 pages is because it outlines the entire scenario that played out between Downer and Papalopoulos, how that was all set up, how the meeting was set up, who set it up, and what it all led to, as well as the discrepancies between what Downer has said and what other people have reported. Remember, Downer has said 4 or 5 different things. He's changed his story a bunch of times. And Papalopoulos is suggesting that it makes it perfectly clear in the 28 pages that really, he said, should have been exculpatory evidence on his part, which means he should never have been charged. So he says that those 28 pages, he's suggesting those 28 pages are going to be very damaging to Alexander Down the Hatch Downer and the Australian government. That's what he's suggesting. He also talked a lot about Halper. And of course, this is definitely a man that needs to be brought in and questioned. Brought in and questioned because he was meddling with Clovis to get to Papalopoulos. He meddled with Flynn to get Flynn to the London Center. It's like he lured everyone over to the London Center where they're surrounded by these Western intel guys who are all working together to screw Trump by framing him and people in his campaign. This is exactly what we're eventually going to learn. We all know that. And so, yes, Mr. Halper, the fat man, definitely needs to be dressed down, and we definitely need to get. He definitely needs to answer some serious questions, and we definitely need to see those responses. I'm tired of this guy, them covering for this guy, and basically saying, well, he's a confidential FBI informant and CIA informant and Western intelligence informant. We have to keep him totally. Look, he's already out. He's already been outed. We know who he is. We know what he's all about. And this was not anything to do with any type of an official, real investigation. He was put in the Trump campaign to frame people. And I don't care if you are a confidential informant. Being a confidential informant for the FBI or CIA doesn't give you carte blanche to go in and frame Americans, especially when you're trying to destroy a potential president, and then after elected president, try to destroy his presidency. No, I'm sorry. Your confidential informant status does not grant you the privilege to conduct that type of activity and be given a free pass. I don't think so. I want to see the fat man. I want to see the fat man answer some questions. And I have a bunch of them. Yes, I do. And by the way, something else that we learned from, and I can't remember if it was Papalopoulos or from the Carlson's recent article, I can't remember exactly who, but we learned last week that Halper, at the same time that he's trying to, do all this stuff, Trump wins the election, and then what does Halper do next? Well, the next thing he tries to do is he tries to get himself a job in the Trump campaign. He's trying to get himself a job as some kind of a State Department official or ambassador or something, at the same time that he's actively working for Western intelligence or the FBI. Now, you're not allowed to do that. You are not allowed to do. There are some lines that are drawn in these investigations with the FBI, confidential informants, certain things you can and cannot do. You cannot be working for the FBI, CIA, whatever, and at the same time, especially without acknowledging it, try to go to work for a president when you're simultaneously working for as a secret agent these government agencies, especially if the whole point of your getting a position on a presidential administration is to undercut and undermine that particular president or administration. That doesn't fly. So the very fact that he was trying to get himself into the campaign, that is a problem. That's crossing a big line, and I certainly hope that someone will call attention to that. Someone definitely needs. This guy needs to be set down and grilled, man. He is a key player here. The fat man. And so these agent provocateurs, of which there were at least 4, Mifsud, Downer, Halper, and Mr. Greenberg. Let's not forget about Mr. Greenberg. I believe that all these people were probably put in play by intelligence, not so much FBI, but by CIA, MI6, British intelligence, Australian intelligence. I think that this was the CIA part of the Brennan, Mr. Potato Head thing, and I believe these people all probably came out of the 6 agency task force. And I believe if they look at each of these individuals, because it just seems strange that you would have Papalopoulos, Flynn, Carter Page, Michael Cohen, and Manafort, and Gates, if you want to go that far, all previously under some sort of microscope by federal authorities and the intel community, the CIA, the FBI, Western intelligence, whatever. All these guys were under the microscope, all of them, before they joined the Trump campaign. And then somehow, all these characters who have been formerly under the microscope find themselves in positions in the Trump campaign. Now, Trump never knew any of these people. Someone referred them to him. And I think if you dig in to this story and to this information, I really hope they go there, you are going to find it probably that there was people probably associated with this multi-agency task force, people associated with these confidential informants, and probably some others that we don't know about. And of course, we still haven't, Papalopoulos is not allowed to say the name of the confidential informant that was inside the Trump campaign, who we all believe at this point is Mike Rogers, not Mike Rogers of the NSA. No, Mike Rogers, the former congressman, former head of the Intelligence Committee. Before Devin Nunes was the head of that committee, it was Mike Rogers. He was an anti-Trumper. He's a neocon. And he was embedded. He's connected to the intelligence agencies. He would be connected to these people. He could have been part of the multi-agency task force. He is someone that could have made moves, that could have somehow gotten these people into the Trump campaign. So you bring in dirty people from day one. Not necessarily that they're dirty people, but people that the CIA, the Western intelligence, had dirtied up. You dirty them up, then you bring them into the Trump campaign. Voila. And we also saw this yesterday when we learned that Alexandra Chalupa, was telling people back in late 2015 that she had a gut feeling that Manafort would end up in the Trump campaign. No one thought Trump even had a chance of winning a single primary at that time. In late 2015, so there's just too many things going on here. Too many things going on here that unless these people have some sort of ESP, a magic crystal ball, they're, know the Wizard of Oz. They have some special, extraordinary talent. Maybe they're, related somehow, blood relative to the amazing Kreskin. I don't know what the situation is here, but there's too many things that occurred here that go beyond coincidence. There's a certain ratios and numbers you can look at and say, okay, well, based on the numbers and the ratios, it's possible that this could happen. There's a probability factor of such and such a percent. When you look at all these things, the probability factors, the coincidental nature of a lot of these things that occurred within the Trump campaign are way, way beyond any reasonable percentages that these things could have happened naturally, organically. No, these things were made to happen by somebody. And if we're talking about the 2015 period, we're talking about prior to the FBI getting engaged in the situation. Remember, it started with the intelligence community, with Brennan, CIA, Western intelligence, MI6, the Australian government, Estonia, all these people. It started as a CIA thing. Brennan moved it into the FBI. And of course, it was the Clinton dirt that she paid for, and the narrative. And this all began back in 2015. So this stuff was all being cooked up. And once it was all cooked up and dinner was prepared, they gave it to the FBI to put it on the table and then sell it. That's exactly what happened. And there's another one last thing. A lot of people are starting to ask this question. When exactly did Uncle Bob, the executioner, find out that this thing was a hoax? I've been asking this now for a month. Dan Bongino also is asking this question, and I agree with Bongino on this particular topic because I've looked at my timeline. And if you look at the timeline, you can see that Mueller really started locking down, putting the hooks into Manafort, Papalopoulos, and Flynn, and Page, putting hooks into them right about 2 months, 3 months after, somewhere around July, late July, August 17. That's when all the stuff hit the fan. That's when the FBI opened up the Operation Crossfire. That's when they started going after all these individuals. And so that tells me that Mueller was there in May, and then all of a sudden, 2 to 3 months later, everybody's locking down on these 4 characters. And that tells me, at that point, Mueller probably checked it out within 2 to 3 months. By literally within end of July 2017, he probably had come to the conclusion that it was all a hoax. And now they had to move on to Plan B, which was some sort of an obstruction. And that everything they did after that was simply to protect the investigation and the evidence that could incriminate the perpetrators of what they did in 2016. It was all a cover-up investigation. 90% of what Mueller did was to cover up the crimes of 2016 and hopefully be able to run this thing as long as they could and maybe get some sort of impeachment or damage the president bad enough to where they can maybe drive him from office or dominate this conversation. So there's a lot that needs to be learned about what Mueller's role was here. And I'm not so sure that Uncle Bob the executioner may not be liable here for criminal violations. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back with more TowerGate. Thanks. Bye.